From the heart of Southern Illinois, this is Roots of Leadership. Long-form conversations with the political figures shaping our region. Not just what they do, but who they are and how they got here. This episode is sponsored by the Little Nashville Cafe in downtown Marion, So Ill Cinema, and Swinford Media Group. Dr. Jacobs, thank you for being here. And hopefully today we'll just find out more about you. The purpose of this is more what brought you to where you're at. Not so much what's happening in Springfield today, but so start at the beginning. Where does the story of Paul Jacobs begin?
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me, number one. I think that's great. My story goes way back. I was actually born in Highland Park, Illinois, and that's what makes me an Illinois resident. But my parents were very thoughtful when I was probably 3 or 4 years old and moved to Florida. They knew that I probably wasn't happy with Chicago, and I'm still not real happy with Chicago, but it's okay. It's a fun place to visit, but I'm sure glad I didn't have to live there. But we were gone doing various things, Navy service, graduating from high school, et cetera, and then we all came back about 50 years ago back to Illinois.
So what did your parents do that took you to Florida?
Dad and Mom actually. Dad was in the Army in 1935, go way back, right? And he was in basically arresting for drugs people. They had a number of military that would be involved with drugs. And so that's what he did. He was basically Army intelligence. Did that, years before the war actually started, World War II actually started. And then he got out, when he did get out in 46, I think. And then he went to optometry school and finished up as a doctor of optometry. And that kind of led me in that direction later in life. But at first, I wasn't going to go to college or anything else. I just get me out and I'm going to just start some businesses. And I did. Actually, we had some interest in yachts, boating. I rebuilt engines. I was a aviation jet mechanic that never, ever once saw a jet when I was on active duty in the Navy. It happened a lot during the 60s, during the Vietnam era. A lot of people were trained for different things, and they ended up not doing those things. They ended up doing other things. And so I ended up on a ship that trained Marines how to get on and off helicopter. Basically, it was so that they could get into a hot zone and out of a hot zone, and then hopefully get home. But that didn't happen with many of them. But that was me. 17 years old, my parents signed for me between my junior and senior year in high school because I wanted to join the service. And they signed and said, okay, I got this year of training for jet mechanic, and never saw a jet. But that's okay. We had to move on. And then I was not planning on doing college after I got out of the military. But
if you don't mind, if your dad was in the Army,
yes,
you wound up in the Navy.
I was
right?
Navy. Yes.
What made you not go the Army route? Did you get pressure from your dad? Or
no, not at all. Somewhat. My oldest brother joined the Marine Corps. And he did get Vietnam, but it was when it was hot, but it wasn't as hot as it was in 66 and 67. He got over in 64, 65, I think. And he made it through that. And then one of my other brothers, older brother, joined the Navy. And I thought, that's pretty good. And then my father said, if you go Army or Marines, you aren't necessarily going to have a really, really good chance of getting something that's good training. You're going to be a really good ground pounder, but you're not necessarily going to get a lot of training. So both of us, my next oldest brother that went Navy, was in dirigibles of all things. He was in New Jersey at the Blimps, and that's what he did because the Navy ran all those things. And then I was a jet mechanic, never saw the jets, got on board the ship. And, that was the direction. All of us were pretty much military. Then we had my very youngest brother ended up Army. But he was already, he was an officer. The rest of us were not through college yet, so we were enlisted. He was an officer. He got through, and then he was on reserve status, National Guard status. I don't know what they had over in California, but then they knocked out his base, one of the bases that were knocked out years ago. And they said, well, you're going to still have to drill. So he would get dressed in his uniform on the weekend and stay home and drill. So that's some of the fun things that happened in the military. But
So 3 brothers?
I have six brothers,
Oh, wow.
including myself, and 3 sisters. There's 9 of us.
And all the brothers served?
Most of no, not all of them did. 2 did not, 4 did, 2 didn't.
It's a very high percentage, though.
That's a very
something
high
to be proud of.
percentage. we all take our nation, our state. We all take everything pretty much to heart. It's something that you just. You either have the calling or you don't, I guess. But I wanted to do it. I thought it would be a good stepping stone too, as a jet mechanic, go work with some of the companies and airlines and whatnot later. But that didn't happen. But I still had a good mechanical ability, so that's why we started different businesses that had engine repair, et cetera.
Huh.
That's what we did. And then we were married. My gosh, I met my dear darling Rhoda in Boston when we were in dry docks for a period of time in Boston in the middle of the winter. And that's where we met when we were just babies. And
where is she from?
She's from Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
She thought she died when she came to Southern Illinois 50 years ago. She goes, there's no street lights. There's no lights. And of course, we're out in Pomona right away. And she goes, my goodness gracious, this is different. And it took her about 3 years to get used to it. But then once you start raising your children and you realize what a great place it is, you kind of get it. It takes a bit, but then you kind of get it. And it was, we've been here ever since.
So where all did you serve when you were in the Navy then?
Basically, we were everywhere in the Caribbean. We were in the Caribbean fleet, which trained the Marines. We would load up the old school way. I was on the USS Boxer, which was I think the 4th or 5th Boxer. We've always had a Boxer ship in the Navy, and they have a new Boxer now that is they used to call them landing platform helicopter, LPHs, but I think they call them a different thing now. But that's where they come in the stern of the ship, and they have all sorts of really neat little things to do with the Marines there. But ours was an old wooden flight deck aircraft carrier from World War II. It was an Essex-class carrier, and we had about 1,000 sailors on board to run this ship that was supposed to be run with about 2,600. So they didn't put that many people on board, basic guys that they needed, and then they would load up 2,000 or 3,000 Marines. And that's what we did just day in, day out. So the Marines went to every island in the Caribbean, and we landed them on there with helicopter assault mostly, but we also did amphibious assaults. The amphibious assaults were never used in Vietnam. They were used for supply, carrying food, trucks, jeeps, et cetera, but they never used it as an assault method. So, but they still had to be trained to do that. And when we were in 66 and 67, when I was active duty, those 2 years, that was the 2 years that we lost 43,000 of the 57,000 men that we lost in Vietnam, which most people don't realize that, but they were really active in going to war, and right after 67, that's when they had the famous, well, we're really not, the U.S. Congress said we are not at war with North Vietnam. They wanted to, MacArthur wanted to go ahead and mop up, not MacArthur, who's the general in charge? Yeah, that's terrible, but that's okay. He wanted to mop it up. He got fired for mopping up. He wanted to mop it up, and they said, no, we're not at war with North Vietnam. South Vietnam is at war with North Vietnam. We can't do that. We can't go through. That would have ended the war. We would have been finished, mopped up, and everything be done, but they didn't do it. So that's where I think he created a ton of resentment from the people in college, and many of the soldiers and sailors that got out had a problem with that. Westmoreland was the general, and they didn't like Westmoreland's idea to go into North Vietnam. So that changed a lot of people's attitude. I think a lot of military guys also got attitudes that, man, we fought and nothing happened. We're sending these guys off the ship to war, and they had as much as 80% casualties in the first 6 weeks. So they knew that they weren't going to be there. That was back though too, when the judges were allowed to offer you prison time, or you can go into the Marine Corps or the Army. And many of these guys would take Marine Corps or Army, and they probably should have taken jail. But it was back when they did that, and there were an awful lot of us that were younger and could remember World War II. Friends and relatives, and Korea War friends and relatives, and we all wanted to protect the United States. So that's the way it is, and I think that's what transforms us as we get older into trying to still do something. And that's one of the biggest reasons probably why I ever even ran for office. I saw what was happening in the state, which I love dearly, and it just isn't the direction I wanted to go. But we had so many businesses here. When we came into practice in 1979, I came into practice here after we finished school in Maryland and then down in Memphis, and then that's when we were back over. The family had already moved back over in the early 70s, and then we were in and out down here while we were in school. But it was exceptionally fun to get back to Illinois, and then we had to practice over Carbondale. And then we started practice. I made a practice 40 years ago in Heron, and then we did here too.
So when you left the service, then
yes,
where did you go? Were you married at this point?
Yes.
So that happens in the timeline, and then
yes, we got married right after, about 8 months after. Rhoda, that little gal, came all the way down to Norfolk, and we had time off, and we went to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, because it was the only state that we could get married in at 18. Well, 19. We were 19, but it was fun. She doesn't got that. It was great. We grew up together, which was kind of fun, and we didn't have any kids until we got a little bit further along in life. About 4 or 5 more years later is when we had our first children, and we were in school and had some businesses there in Washington D.C. We were in Maryland at the time because Daddy was there.
Okay.
That's where he went after he was. That's where we were. They were at Eglin Air Force Base, and that's why we moved down there. And we're not certain exactly what he did. But it was hush hush. For the most part, what we were able to garner was that he was in charge of all of the pilots that we got from World War II that were jet pilots, because we didn't have jets worth a darn. England had a few jets. We didn't have anything, but we had some really, really good Luftwaffe jets, Nazi jets, that we brought over along with the pilots. And many of the pilots were Luftwaffe. They were not Nazi.
Huh.
I mean, they were not, in the Nazi party. They couldn't force the pilots all to do that, and they wouldn't. They're just kind of a unique breed anyway. But so we think that he was in charge of making certain that the officers, the Germans that he had, were scattered around Florida, and they were in the Panhandle, of course. They were in Fort Walton and Destin and Niceville, and they were everywhere. So you didn't have a big group of Germans because people didn't like the Germans at that point in life, and so that's why we were down there. And then he went up to the Department of Defense at the Pentagon a few years later. And that's when we ended up in D.C. in Maryland for a number of years.
So what led him to be an optometrist then?
He thought that would be really, he always wanted to do something like that. And so he had GI Bill after World War II. They would pretty well put you through anything you wanted to do. And they did. But then he was probably not the best businessman on earth. So running a practice isn't something that in med school or dental school or optometry school, you don't really learn how to do that well, especially back in those days. You just got out and hung your shingle and people would come see you. Well, it's more than that. It's just like any other business. You have to do more than that. And he was there, and then he got this offer from the federal government to go down there, and I think that just said, well, that's good. But he always kept his license, and he would practice wherever he could, but he always kept his license, and when he retired, that's what he meant to do. And he retired when he was 55, came back home. It's just basically how we ended up back here. They were there in Eglin, and then we were in Washington, D.C.
So when you left optometry school,
yes,
I'm curious about this, because people who are involved in what you're involved with
yes,
politics, It takes an odd mindset.
Oh.
Was that on your mind then, or was it really something that down the road became something you were interested in, or were you really interested in politics when you were a kid?
All my life, yeah, all my life, and I think that is. I think there are some weird ducks that do this for sure. Everybody, I think, has the same wish, regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of left or right. I think everybody wants to do the right thing for the people, but many times it's just so different in thinking. So as it got worse and worse and worse, I had no choice but to go ahead and run. But yeah, I had thought about it when we were younger. But my gosh, we had four kids, and you know, a couple of them went to med schools, which is expensive, and we're probably just like anybody else. We sure didn't save anything for college. We were spending everything we could just to get them through school and running here and running there, you know. So we paid as we went, and that was a pricey situation, which did not allow us to go into politics at any particular point. I had a number of folks in Jackson County that wanted me to run for county board way back when, but they were mostly Democrats, and so I said, I love you guys to death, but of course that was back when the Democratic Party in the 70s and 80s. I mean, they were reasonable then, but it's gotten a little bit unreasonable, I think. The things that we think are logical, they just think we're illogical. You know, I mean. Two genders, that's a novel idea. I don't really care about what most people do on their own and private, et cetera. But when it comes down to what they want to do with transgender, and everybody's upset on the majority party in Illinois that they're not going to be able to have men on women's teams, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If they're truly for women, why would they put women against biological males who are different? And if someone just doesn't realize that, you can take all the hormones you want, you're still going to be different. You're going to be stronger, faster, period. You know, so it's something that's bad.
I'm grateful that nationally it seems like we're trending back in the opposite direction.
We're trending heavily back in the opposite direction, except in Illinois.
I know.
We're working on it, though. What folks don't understand too in this state, we are in flux. We're moving in a conservative direction again. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be 5 years, but they are going in a conservative direction. And I think the single thing that has single-handedly made people think more about it is the illegal immigration. You get to Chicago and you have all of the illegal immigrants that are up there, and they're putting them in hotels, and they're living in tent cities, they're getting free health care. You know, they were spending $1 billion with health care and facilities for them to stay in. They were spending $1 billion a year for the last 3 years, $3 billion. And guess what? We're $3 billion short on the budget. You know, so and as a Catholic, I agree you've got to take care of the impoverished, the poor, the homeless, et cetera. But that starts at home. You know, you've got to take care of the people that have been here for generations. Mm-hmm. And the Black Caucus is having a little trouble with that. They see the black babies, male, female, in some of the really poor areas, and not so necessarily poor areas that have no food or not enough food. They don't have heat, and they don't have air conditioning, they don't have a lot of things. That's their priority, is their community, and they're very community minded, and they're getting a little bit disgusted with it. And I think that they're going to probably change it. There's a group that is Change Chicago Red, which is a affiliation of a number of black businesses, black-owned businesses, black people that are happy to have voted for Trump, and they're very much wanting to change the direction that Chicago's going. And you talk to these guys; they're HVAC people, plumbers. They're people that are trying to make a living too, just like everybody else. And the regulations, the mandates, the laws, the licensing, everything that we do. We need to come back, and we've got a bill that I'm a co-sponsor on, a DOGE for Illinois, and I'm all for that. I'm ready to go, but I don't think it will probably get into committee, but we're still preaching on it. We're not being efficient, and I think that's one of the basic differences in Republican and Democrat, is the Republicans are budget-minded, and you spend what you have to spend, whereas the Democrats, and they don't think that the government is the answer, whereas a Democrat or progressive thinks that the more money you throw at it, the better it is. And they don't care whose money it is. That's the problem. And my favorite person on earth running a country was Margaret Thatcher, and her idea, and people have credited other people with the statement, but her statement that the problem with communism is sooner or later you run out of other people's money, and we're there. You can't continue to do the businesses and all of the businesses in the state of Illinois, in taxes, workman's comp, ridiculous lawsuits. So there are just many things that Illinois does that are bad for business. Mm-hmm. And then expect the businesses to move in. Now, some of them have moved in. I'm not going to say that they haven't. And I think that many could possibly come with some minor changes in the way we do business. But I'm hoping that changes. But that was something I watched and saw early on in life, and it was the politics of just growing up. I think that and when I was younger, I was obviously definitely a Democrat, being Catholic, and when Kennedy ran, you weren't Catholic unless you voted for Kennedy. I was too young to vote, but that was, I think, one of the biggest times. But I watched Eisenhower. I watched, as soon as I was old enough to watch TV back in the 50s when we got a first TV, I watched all. When Walter Cronkite finally got on board, and you often hear about Walter Cronkite, and I think that was what a lot of people, older people, particularly boomers and whatnot, watched, and he tried to give you the news, not his interpretation of the news. And I think that's what they've lost. And that's, the journalists today want to interpret everything that's going on instead of just, there was a riot at such and such, and they'll go into some reason why the riot was there instead of just reporting the news. And you can't be biased with it. You have to just report the news. And I think that's what Walter did. And I think he was instrumental in me watching the news. I don't think I missed very many nights or days without watching the news. Of course, you didn't have a bunch of channels. You had 3 channels.
Limited options.
That's right.
Now we're a little saturated with.
Yeah, we're saturated. I'm going to tell you, oh my goodness gracious, to watch the kids grow up, and it's just phones, constantly. We have a bill that I hope, and actually the governor thought that he wanted to get rid of phones in the schools. I think they need to get rid of the phones in the schools. It's something that, hey, just turn them in here. You can pick it up on your way home. If there's some kind of an emergency at home, they'll go just like we used to. They'll call the office, and the office will come get you. I mean, it's not something that's life and death. But the kids today can't live without the phone. Heck, I can't live without the phone now because of all the things I have on there, all the political contacts, business contacts that you have on one stupid little computer like that. And that would have been books and pages. Oh, wow, we did all that too, yeah. Those are things that we did when we were here, once we did get back home and started practice.
So what brought you to Pomona? And I'm a Southern Illinois guy. I'm from Campbell Hill, and Pomona is not usually a place that somebody would choose to...
That was when my one hippie brother... who was the Navy guy in the blimps and whatnot, right? But he was one of the ones that probably did inhale a few times, and all of the hippies back in the late '60s and '70s even that were moving to Makanda and Pomona. So he was going through, and he's meeting some of his buddies and this, that, and the other, and he found a piece of property down there that he really liked. And then I said, well, just, and I was still in school at the time. I said, well, if you find something, let me know. So he did. He found a nice piece of property down there that I liked. I said, heck, I can build on this. This will be great. And that's pretty much how we got there. We always kind of laugh about the Makanda hippies and the Pomona hippies. The Makanda hippies are folks that have moved into Makanda, but they don't have guns. The Pomona hippies moved into Pomona, and they do have guns. So there's a difference in the way
funny.
they think. They're very Second Amendment aware.
So where did you open your first practice then?
First practice actually was with my dad in Murfreesboro. We worked together for about 6 years, and then I opened a practice in Carbondale and Heron and Anna. I had opened a practice with my dad in Heron, and when we split practices up in 6 months. He didn't want to go to all the different places. It was just too hard for him. I said, well, don't worry about it. So we split up, and then I ended up with the Carbondale practice that is existing now. We had the Heron practice, Marion and Anna. Anna, we've been in there 40-some years, here 40-some years, and Heron, we were there 40 years before they had to close it down. It's a shame. COVID, well, if you think it only affected about a quarter of our optometric practices, that's not too bad compared to what some people had. I mean, they were wiped out, restaurants wiped out, and so many businesses, people just left the state. I could see why people would come to Marion. They're much more welcoming in a lot of places. Yeah, it's great. But Southern Illinois in general, I think, is welcoming. We've got businesses that we're trying to get going. We also, we came there to Pomona because I liked the area, and we could ride horses. We could do whatever we wanted down there, and it was good. Yeah, grapes. Well, that was my father. It was, well, we got to make sure you find something that you can grow grapes. I said, I didn't know anything about grapes, And we did. I looked at it, got him out there. He says, yeah, we can grow grapes on this. This is good. It's got the ground's going this way and this way and this way. The cold will run off and the heat will run up. I said, okay, fine. So we bought it with that idea at some point. And then it was probably, we opened in 96. I started the vineyard in 1996. So about 15 years after we had, 15, maybe a little bit more than that we bought that. And the kids were all through school. And they're either in college or finishing college or in med school and finishing med school. And my son, who was the lucky one, being the fourth one, got to plant grapes with Rhoda and I. And they only had to pull out a few 400 or 500 foot rows because they were going like this instead of nice and straight. I said, it's a vineyard. They have to be in line because the equipment going through there is going to clip off the ones that aren't in line. So they did that, and they started to really work really well together.
So with the vineyard, what did you see in the market? Because you were an early mover on vineyards becoming a thing in the region.
Oh, absolutely. I think that with Renzaglias, who we know very well, and Guy, the patriarch of the whole thing, we got to know him pretty well. And all we were going to do is we started to have the kids leave. I figured, well, this is a good time we could go ahead and plant grapes and just grow them. We're nurturing people. We'll just grow them and we'll sell them to Alto vineyards, And that started out like that. We go, well, that'll be okay. We'll just do that.
Did your dad know how to make wine then?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you came from that a little bit.
The Germans and Italians of that era, all their families had someone in the family that made wine and beer. And my grandmother was the one that taught me when I was pretty young how to do wine and beer. So I knew how to do it, just not on a grand scale. And I've always been interested in the fermentation business. So I go, well, this will be fun. But Guy said, one time we were over having some wine and tasting different wines. Well, you should grow this one, this one, this one. Okay. He said, well, the real money is going to be in the actual winery and the winery retail sales. So we blame Paul Renzaglia and Guy Renzaglia for getting us into that mess. But it is kind of curious that at the same time when we were buying the property out there, the Renzaglias were buying property just about a couple miles apart. And so, the Italian knowledge on the grape growing and the German knowledge on the grape growing, both of us ended up right there. And they were one of the first ones. And we were like fifth or sixth winery to open. We started it 30 years ago, which is amazing. We sold it about 5 years ago, so we could also do this. I was trying to clear up all the businesses, but the winery, and then we were the first winery with a brewery also. It's hard to go through the paperwork to get that done, all the legal ins and outs, but I'm good at going through those things and interpreting what they want and then writing it down, make the applications, and here you go. So it was, we were the first ones to in the state of Illinois to have a brewery along with the winery. And ultimately, we wanted to go ahead and get a distillery too, which is out there now. But yeah, we started that years and years ago. The restaurant, we did restaurants. We did almost 600 weddings in 25 years.
Wow.
And that's a lot of weddings. And those were big. Our largest wedding was 800. And that's a lot of folks. I had 3 or 4 truckloads of rental equipment, semi-truckloads of rental equipment that we had to unload and to do that one. And it was kind of a mess up. The groom's mom knew that we could do 400 people. And no, that was the groom's mom. No, the bride. The bride's mom sent out 400 invites. Well, that's plus one at least. So I said, no, we can't do this. We had a big powwow. I said, no, we can't do this. They said, oh, you can do it, Doc. You can do it. You can do it. I said, okay, we'll try to. Well, I'll figure it out because they couldn't get into the student center. And nobody wanted to handle 800. And I said, well, we'll figure it out. It was great. It was all served. One of my son-in-laws now had a bar downtown, and he called up all of his waitresses and bartenders and said, well, you're going to work this week. Alfred Dr. Jacobs. I said, oh, okay. So we had 50 servers and about 25 bartenders, and everything was served.
Wow.
We had a bisque, soup, served. We had what else? Oh, shrimp cocktail. It was endless shrimp cocktail. Yeah, Cornish hens we cooked. I had to borrow a couple of smokers from down in Cape Girardeau and bring them up. We didn't smoke, but we couldn't get all the hens in anything else. I have 4 ovens in the winery. We could cook about half of them, but I couldn't cook the other. So we did that, and and that's what I think we do, and have had a really good way of doing. We can figure out how to fix things and get things done, and that's not from me. That's from God. I mean, I was born with a lot of gifts that a lot of people unfortunately aren't born with, but you got to use them all. That's why we've done businesses. I had a flight school out in Carbondale, in Murfreesboro, at the airport there.
Really?
I had a flight school there, and that's why I flew from. We had 14 aircraft there, from jet prop on down. They were all outfitted. Most of them were outfitted with the air ambulance, so that we could fly patients wherever. People here might have had mom and dad out in Arizona, and they're bad, and they can't get back on a commercial. So we'd fly out, pick them up, bring them back home. But then we also had a flight school at the university there that was private flight school, and we trained I don't know how many pilots. I had guys that went with UPS, and I think that he's still working one, but he ended up their chief pilot for the 747 fleet for
Wow.
hauling stuff. And he always kind of laughed because he said, I don't want to fly people, man. I'm gonna fly packages. They don't talk back. So that we had any number of people that worked through us and got their licenses with us, or worked for me and had their licenses through university, that big time flyers. All American, and back in Pan Am was still around, United, all of them. They've flown everywhere.
So you were a sucker for government regulation businesses.
Absolutely. I couldn't seem to get away from them. It was true. I hadn't thought of it that way, Aaron.
Well, but I assume that probably continued to inform politically where you were at, dealing constantly with regulations made by people who generally have no idea what it's like to be on the other side of it.
I would say that definitely was one of those things that stuck in your craw. You go, man, this is stupid, but I knew how to do it, and it didn't bother me. I would do it. And then maybe in the back of my mind thinking, well, maybe someday we can change some of this stuff. And we have changed a number of the liquor licensing issues. We've made some things much easier. for people to have a brewery or a distillery along with their winery. And then, of course, then you have the people, it's like everything's 50-50, you know, half the people want it, half the people don't want it. So you have folks, when we were getting the laws changed where you could go ahead and do beer and distillery, we just made it easier for you to do it, but you could do it then, and because we did all the things necessary to change the laws. Then you had people, well, I don't want to do that, and I'm going to have to pay more money for my license. And you go, well, okay. They said, no, I don't want a brewery. I just want to do wine. And, you know, so that's okay. So we ended up getting their licenses reduced again because they weren't supposed to raise their license fees. And there's, you know, you've got so many licenses. I think I don't know how many licenses I carry. In optometry, you have to carry your drug license, your license itself as a physician, your license that you can do prescription drugs. I mean, they used to be like, you'd get back 45 years ago when I first started practice, you'd get a license, or if you needed two, you'd get it, and it'd be, you know, $400 maybe. Now you're up around 1,000 or so or more. Same thing with the wineries. That's a good example. When we first got there, you had to have your winemaker's license and your winemaker's retail license, and you had to have your license for the property. They used to be about $500 for all 4 licenses. Now I think they're closer to 2,000. So it is higher and higher and higher, but it's a sin tax. They can get those passed easily with liquor or cigarettes or anything else. Yeah, but that was one of our favorite things, was I think the flight school and flying, and then the winery and brewery. Those were really fun.
Now, did you fly your family around at all?
Yeah.
What did you fly?
I threw a pressurized 340, Cessna 340. It's a 6-seat pressurized aircraft. We'd fly at 30,000, 32,000.
Wow, it's up there.
And it would, that way we were around or above most of the bad weather. So, you know, you have to take that very seriously if you're going to fly. But we flew lots and lots of hours with the kids, and many times it was taking the kids, man. We were flying to here or there and the other for interviews for colleges, and you know all my girls went to SIU, and my son went to U of I. But we're university people, Illinois University people, and then of course they had to go elsewhere for med schools and podiatry schools, and well, my son he got his MBA up in Edwardsville, so he did U of I, then Edwardsville, so he stayed here and did that, but now he's in St. Louis. So,
well, so kids are out.
Yep.
You're in a position where you can run and take a shot. What were the things that really drove you to go for it? Because there are a lot of people who think about it.
Yes.
And putting, as you well know, putting your name out there and your face, and there are people who don't know you who will say terrible things about you. What led you to the decision to run?
Well, I think, as you may remember, one of our legislators voted for some taxes that I felt were bad. And I said, you know, we're just going to keep going up and up and up and up. So I ran then. I think, though, I'm okay letting people talk about me. I always try to let it go over. And that, I think, comes from practicing and seeing patients, because you can't please every person. You try to please every person. You try to make every diagnosis has to be correct. So it's not a thing where you can have misdiagnosis. But you're going to have people that don't like you. But on the other hand, I have tens of thousands of people in this district that do know me and do like me. So I had an advantage as far as name recognition that a lot of people didn't even think of. I mean, I had the Republican Party said, well, you need to quit practicing. I said, why would I do that? I'll see 50 people in a week, and we talk politics and we talk religion. You can do any of that in my office, you know. But I think that they may not talk politics and religion anymore because I'm a hired hand there now. But yeah, I mean, I have so many patients over the years that they're good followers, and you know, if even on my Democrat side, when they get in there to vote, many times they go, well, you know, I trust Doc with my eyes. I think I'm going to go ahead and trust him with this too. I know he's going to do the best that he thinks he should do, and I think that that motivated me more with the kids gone and seeing the direction that the state was going in. It's not from our local. I mean, our local guys and gals do what they want to do as far as the legislators. They try to do what their district wants them to do. And many times it's misinterpreted, but, you know, I think down here we have a really good group of folks. Then you get further up into the Chicago area, and you have a pretty strange thinking people on what is normal, as we were going over before. Mm-hmm. What's normal and abnormal. And I said, well, I'll just run, but I'm going to run again. I've always said I'm never going to do more than 10 years. And when I run again, this is going to be 8. I'm finishing up 6 years now in this term. And as you get older, you kind of go, well, maybe I should be traveling more and more. But we get out, and because I don't practice as much, you know, a day or two a week, and only from June to December. You know, I tried 4 years ago to try to see patients on and off based on the calendar, which was definitely etched in stone, right? So that calendar would change. You'd have 1 week that was all loaded, and they would change it and go, no, you're coming in that week, and you're going to be off the next week. So I said, no, that's just not fair to the patients to have them all set. And then you got to call them all and say, well, you're going to have to see one of the other doctors, or we can schedule you again when we think he's going to be here. So we found a long time ago that it was best just not to take patients' exams during January through May. And then June through December we can do it. And that you just have to organize your life a lot of times. And that does allow us, though, to take off a little bit of time here and there. But in this business, it's not part-time. I mean, this is 365. I mean, you're doing something like this, you're campaigning somewhere, you're doing state functions somewhere, and it's middle of the night you'll get calls. I didn't get calls from my patients as much as I get calls from constituents. But nobody is belligerent, and they just want questions answered. And so far nobody's been terrible at all. And I think that's, I'm hoping that that's a respect that I garnered from my optometry days, where, you know, as a physician you get some respect. But you're right. A lot of people don't like you, and they'll talk behind your back or wherever, or in front of your back.
So it was 2020 your when you won, and
yes.
Okay.
Isn't that right? Yeah, 20. That would be right.
So in that primary, did you have a challenger in the general?
Let's see. In the primary, we had 6 people in that one. Yeah, there were 4 or 5. Will Stevens came in, and then he went out. So I think it was 5. That we ended up with 5 in the primary. And then we did not have a Democrat against us. So the next time, when I think we ran, I think that's when we had our friend from Carbondale that ran against me.
Well, so tell me then about primary night 2020, where you're in again.
Yeah.
When did you know that you had won, think that you had won, and what was that like?
Well, it's always kind of fun to win.
Of course.
Without a doubt. I do think that I personally maybe approach it a little bit differently, in that if I don't win, I've got a lot of life that I can do. And even though you want to win, I try to prep up for not winning. I think it's a smart move, and then I have to console Rhoda because she gets all upset about that. But the first time that we did win in the primary was pretty exciting, and it was touch and go. And that was when we still had Jefferson County, and not into Williamson yet. They hadn't done the maps yet. and no redistricting. But Williamson County, one of my daughters, my MD daughter, was up there for 10 years. And so we knew a lot of the people up there, which still had name recognition. But then there were three guys from Jefferson County that ran. And they also had better name recognition to some degree, So it was kind of touch and go up there, but then we finally ended up winning up there, and then did great down through here. So it was okay, but we had no Williamson County at that time. We had part of Jackson and all of Murphy on out to the Campbell Hill out that way, and then we had part of it ran half of DuQuoin, half of Carbondale. All of Murphy at the time, and half of Anna, half of Dongola, and then we came back up and around. It was the strangest one that you could do, but it was very, very conservative. So it was a good district. So we weren't too excited about changing around. But then when I saw that we got almost all of Williamson County, at least to the east of Marion,
Yep.
and all that way, most of the population. And I had 2 offices here. I'm going, this is not bad. So I didn't gripe too much when they were changing them around, even though I have so many good friends up in Jefferson, which is the main one we lost, and part of Perry, with DuQuoin. You really don't like to lose your people. But for us, it was kind of satisfying that it was going into a county that I knew. So it was good. And that gave me the name recognition here, even though a lot of people didn't realize that you do. I mean, you've got 10,000, 15,000 patient records in each one of those offices, and that can be the difference in an election. I mean, it really can. And then we had, I don't know if we'll have a primary this time around or not, but we're ready for any, you just kind of do.
Sure.
You just do, and you do what you can do. We didn't have a primary last time or an opponent.
First time.
This is the first time we didn't have an opponent or a primary, which was really good. It was comfy, but then I was looking through my schedule, my calendar from the first 2 years in office, and the last 2 years, I'm going, well, hell, we did the same amount of events, or maybe a few more. So I think you just get to approach it differently. You don't have to go thinking, man, I got to get every one of these people to win, and how you doing? It's a different mentality, but we're ready for any of the mental things that come off. You got to be just a little bit strong and go. You can't do as a physician of any type. You can't do diagnosis constantly, day in, day out, without having a little bit of a understanding of the mental hardness that you have to have. And you stick with your decision and you go. So, and you just do what you have to do.
What do you think is something that's misunderstood by the general public about what you do and how Springfield works?
I don't think until you go to Springfield, you have any idea how it works. and I qualify that works with quotations because I'm not sure it does work, but it does in its own little way. I think the biggest thing that people don't understand is even though we're 2-1 against us in votes, the committees that we're on are where we negotiate. And in my particular case, I've been on healthcare licensing now. I'm in my 5th year on healthcare licensing. And they have always come to me and said, is this a good bill or a bad bill? And they do, and they'll go to Patrick and for law advice on some of these bills. Is this a good bill or a bad bill? But he's unfortunately in some of those things where they're just going to jam it down our throat anyway. Yeah, bam, bam, bam. We can win and that's it. But it is nice that they will do that. And frequently we get bills not called even into the committee, and therefore they're not going to be on the floor. That part is always going to be there, and that's sometimes I think where the Republicans will lose sight that you do have to be nice to everybody in the Republican Party and in the Democrat Party, whether you love them or hate them. You're not going to get anything done with 2-1. Unless you can get on. I get on board with Chief Coe on a lot if they have good bills that don't go against your gut, your Second Amendment, abortion, balanced budgets, all the things that are just core values. For a Republican, it's core values. You can't go away from those things. A real education would be nice too, instead of what we're doing. The teachers are just screwed over as far as I'm concerned because of the leadership that they have. And this state, unfortunately, I think, is showing that with their test scores in math and science and reading, et cetera. So, but I think that the public in general doesn't understand what we do have to do to get things done, especially with the amount of votes that we have compared to the majority party votes. I think that's going to change. I think many of us will be in Chicago trying to flip some seats up there with our flip Chicago red, black Illinoisans that want to. They're tired of it. They're absolutely tired of it. They go, well, what is the Democrat Party giving me? And they're gaining more and more and more support from those groups, and that's good. I think that the way the politics works is something maybe I learned with 9 brothers and sisters. I was always a mediator, the joiner of the crew. When they were all griping and moaning, I was in the middle. I wasn't the oldest or the youngest, so I was in the middle. And frequently, I tried to unify and mediate. And I think that I do that well in Springfield also. That's probably one of the biggest things that I can bring to the table, and we can get things that are really bad thrown out. If they have an idea, the majority party has an idea that they're going to pass this regardless, what they're going to pass. They can pass. They can do anything they want, but they still will talk to the people that will talk to them. And I don't feel that I need to alienate anybody. We still want to talk on the floor about we think this is a bad idea or a bad idea. But I like to do most of my talking with just 4 or 5 of us around in the committees or pre-committee because they're all audioed and videoed. So, but that's what they in the old days, back when ethics were a real question, they would call those the smoke-filled rooms, the deals that are made in those smoke-filled rooms. By gosh, if we didn't have some of those smoke-filled rooms, we'd have even worse bills. So we're absent the smoke, but we still have those rooms, and it is something I think that there's a trust that you get, even though you're 180 degrees on opinions on certain things. There's a trust that you get with both parties. Some trusting this one, that one. No one's going to ever be your friend, but you can still be cordial. And you can still even have a lunch or have a dinner or whatever with them. And it just goes further to try to help the state get better bills. And, I would like to see them not do 4,500 bills. I think it's 4,500, 5,000 this year, which is just, and people go, well, what do I think about this bill? And I go, you're going to have to explain the bill to me a little bit more. Well, it was bill number 1322. I said, well, that's good, but I don't have 5,000 of them memorized. You're going to have to give me a little bit more on that. But I think that people do, as a republic, trust their legislators a lot to represent them there. How they represent them there, I think that they don't understand. They don't understand completely. I didn't really understand 100%. I think it took. It definitely takes a year to get your feet wet and just get an idea of what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. And I was busy. I didn't, shame on me, but I didn't get involved because I had so many Democrat and Republican patients. I didn't get involved with the committees, the Republican committees or Democrat committees. In every county. I wasn't going to run for county board. You're at that point in life when you're trying to get your kids through school and get into some kind of a degree program that's going to lead to them being successful individuals. So you're just too busy a lot of times, and I think it's even worse today. I think a lot of people are too busy. It'd be great if you could do it where you could go in and serve 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and then come back out. But it might take you that long to learn how in the hell to even get along with everybody. So it's something that I've always thought that term limits are good, but I've also thought that term limits are the vote. I think if you don't, but if you have someone that you really like and you want them there, if they term limit out, well, then you have to have someone else. And the other side of that coin is that, well, you'll have new people in there, new thoughts in there, et cetera, et cetera. And I go, well, I don't know if you're going to. If you're a Republican, you're going to have pretty much the same thoughts. Second Amendment, abortion issues, balanced budgets, that's going to still be the same. How you approach it, how you get to that point where you can win some, I think that's the individualism of Republicans, and that's partly why we fight a lot. They're all individuals, whereas Democrats, they just toe
Yes.
that. They just toe, okay, we got to vote this way, you got to vote this way, you got to vote, and they vote en masse, bump, because they feel good. They feel good about their bill, about the things they're doing. Oh, we're helping the kids, and we're helping this and helping, and they're not. They're not. But yeah, it's I think something that people are more than welcome to come up. I've had a few people come up and spend a day up there, and we're pretty amazed at some of the dead time that we have. But then that's the time when you meet with people. The office is open. We're there. When we're there, we try to be in and try to see everybody that we can. But people are welcome to get up there. I don't think any legislator would tell you, don't show up. I don't want to see you. That goes back to the little bit different personalities of people that do decide to run. You do have to realize you're going to be put out in the public, and you lose a lot of your suing abilities because then you're a public figure. you no longer are Joe Blow from Pomona. You're a public figure, and you fall under different rules. So that's, I think a lot of times people don't understand that happens. You're public then. That the rest of your life you're public. They can say whatever the hell they want to say, and they don't even have to be true. So that's the thing that politics is kind of got a bad name for, but hopefully we don't get too many bad names. Bad things called at us. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Jacobs, is there anything else you want to talk about or have we hit pretty much the story of what brought you here?
I think we have. It's we knew this was a great area, and we knew it was far from Chicago. And when we got here, the family had already been here for a few years, and so they were able to introduce to this, and this, and that's how we ended up finding our property that we bought, years ago. The people that had it contracted for deed with me, and I had no job. I was still in school. I was like freshman in professional school. I think it was my first year in 1975. Down in Memphis, and that was when we made our big move from Maryland and D.C., and that was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting. The area is it excited me in that I could see that I could have a piece of property and I could do a little farming if I wanted to farm. I could do whatever we wanted to. We still didn't know what the hell my father was talking about with being able to grow grapes. We weren't certain about that. Rhoda and I were going, man, we got to raise kids. But I'm glad that he did look at each piece, because there were a couple of pieces that we looked at. He said, no, this is no good. You can't grow any grapes. And they were more in town, flat, and they didn't have any hills. You have to have the hills to let the air come up if it's warm and down if it's cold. I mean, it's basic science. But I don't think, there's any place that the kids, they're all going to end up being, most of them are away from the state now. I mean, we've got a couple that are left, but they may end up being gone. They go, well, where are you going to go? I'm going, I'm going to go to Pomona. This is where I like to be. I don't think that we'll see how this campaign goes this time around. If we get it at the end of the 8 years and decide to go one more maybe after that, but I think I will term limit myself to 10 years. And that's God willing, and you don't know when you get a little bit older what the what's in the cards, and so you just go, and I think optimism. You just be optimistic on everything you do. You get up this morning, great. That's very optimistic. I'm happy I got up. Yeah, it's good. It's good, and the life here is just so good. Mm-hmm. I think, but I sure wish we could change some laws that get rid of a few.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing in that direction, and thank you for coming on the show. And
we appreciate it. We appreciate it, Aaron. The things like this, I think, are important for people to get to know you, and it. Even if you've been there 5-6 years, people still trying to find you and look at, find out what makes you tick. And I think these are the things that help.
Well, I appreciate you being on. And with that, we'll call it a wrap.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.